Good morning. You're watching Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Biniam Gatala. Thank you for joining us. And now the news in full. Stay tuned. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and his delegation have visited Doha, Qatar, in connection to the 5th United Nations Conference on the Least Developed Countries. LEDS takes place in Doha, Qatar, with the objective to mobilize international community's commitment towards the implementation of the Doha Programme of Action for LEDS 2022 to 2031, adopted by the UN General Assembly in April 2022. The world's least developed countries are in a race against time to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals by 2013. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed met with the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, and the two have explored ways to enhancing bilateral ties between their respective countries and exchanged views on regional issues. There are many opportunities for Qatari investment in various sectors in Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed noted. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed met His Highness Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, father of the Emir of the State of Qatar. The discussion revolved around supporting social development and investments in Ethiopia. In other development, in sidelines with the 5th UNLDC conference, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed held bilateral discussion with General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, President of the Sovereign Council of Sudan, and Mani Abdullah Sadi, the Prime Minister of Yemen. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed held a discussion on the sideline of the 5th United Nations Conference on the Least Developed Countries in Doha, Qatar, according to the Office of the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and his delegation are in Doha, Qatar, to take part at the 5 days conference. Government leaders and other stakeholders are set to assess implementation of the Istanbul Programme of Actions and mobilize additional international support in action for the world's 46 least developed countries.
The 70th Global
It's expected that
Ethiopia is Ethiopians
Our news is always aired on Monday to Friday on 11 a.m. and 9 p.m. and also on Saturday and Sunday on 9 p.m. Make sure to follow us.
This is a segment where we see pertinent issue of concern, and I'm joined here in the studio by Kidan Appaina to tell us more. Very warm welcome, Kidan.
Thank you very much, Binyam.
So what has happened significantly over the past 24 hours? Could you tell us?
Well, I'm going to be talking about the United Nations Conference on the Least Developed Countries, or LDCs, like the first two news items were regarding. So world leaders, including Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia, are gathered in Doha, Qatar for this said conference, which began on the 5th of March and is expected to last until the 9th. Now, this conference, according to the United Nations, is a once-in-a-decade opportunity to accelerate sustainable development in places where international assistance is needed the most, and to tap into the full potential of the least developed countries, or LDCs as I'll be referring to them here on, to help them make progress on the road to prosperity. This is according to the United Nations. Now, over the 5 days of the LDC 5 conference in Doha, world leaders will gather with the private sector, with civil society, with parliamentarians and young people to advance new ideas, raise new pledges of support, and spur different deliveries on agreed commitments through the Doha Programme of Action, or the DPOA. Now, at the conference, it is expected to look into specific initiatives or incentives and concentrate on deliverables that will be announced during this conference, and it will address the LDC specific challenge towards sustainable development. So far throughout the conference, some major impediments to the LDCs in regards to reaching sustainable development goals have been reached or have been pointed out. And in this regard, I'm going to be talking about the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who highlighted some of the major issues. Now, according to him, he said that different systems and different structures are non-existent or stretched for the developing countries or least developing countries. And he pointed out that the global financial systems that have been created by the wealthy countries to serve their own interests have been extremely unfair to these countries. So they have to pay an interest rate, according to him, that can be 8 times higher than that of the developed countries. And to quote him exactly, actually, today 25 developing economies, according to him, are spending over 20% of government revenue solely on servicing debt. So in the face of such deep challenge, the UN chief stated that the LDCs need a, quote, revolution of support in 3 key areas. So the first area that he mentioned is support to achieve sustainable development goals. So he said that these countries consider the sustainable development goals to survive within themselves, such as poverty eradication, the health goals, the food, the clean water and sanitation, as well as incentive package for sustainable development goals, for which the world must stand together, he said, and provide at least $500 million annually, $500 billion actually, billion dollars annually for developing countries. So he added that it's time for developing countries to fulfill their obligations towards the least developed countries by providing a 0.15 to 0.20% of their GDP in the form of development aid, and that the United Nations will not accept any more excuses. So secondly, the UN chief also pointed out that it is necessary to reform the global financial system through a sort of new Bretton Woods movement. And he elaborated that the international financial institutions, like I said earlier, must devise ways to provide financing when it is needed. And this includes also including into their instruments or into their clauses catastrophe and pandemic clauses. And third, or last but not least, he mentioned the evolution in climate support. He added that LDCs are particularly vulnerable to climate change despite being the least contributors. And so he said that to provide the necessary support, developed countries need to fulfill their $100 billion promise to developing countries to simplify access to climate finance, operationalizing the loss and damage fund, double adaptation finance, and replenish the UN-backed Green Climate Fund. So with these and other vital aims in mind, he also stated, or he promised actually, to host a climate ambition summit at the UN headquarters in September.
Good. Taking your attention to, there are several ideas that you've mentioned, and I do believe this will be implemented. And then how do you see also the effort of the Ethiopian government in taking part, expanding sustainable development, because that was a very agenda that has been raised, and what is really expected?
Well, as many countries have lauded and seem to point out, I'm going to be focusing on the third area that Antonio Guterres pointed out, and that is climate support. So despite or regardless of the support from developed countries, Ethiopia has taken the initiative into its own hand by launching, as you know, the Green Legacy Initiative. So that is one step closer to achieving some of the goals of the Sustainable Development Goals.
Kidana Baina, thank you so much for the brief illustration on the recent point that you have mentioned. I really appreciate.
You're very welcome.
Welcome back. You're watching Addis News Hour. Now step into another development. The history of Ethiopia is mainly of success if it comes to the struggle against foreign invaders who attempt to challenge its unity, sovereignty, and integrity. The recently celebrated victory of Adwa is the case in point. When it comes to the war in the eastern part of Ethiopia, which is against the invasion of Somalia troops led by the Bari, brings us to the decisive victory of Karamara. This year marks 45th anniversary of Karamara victory. And Daniel Kassaon has more on this. Take a look.
The history of Ethiopia has lots of unique history. Some are gained naturally and others are attained by bitter struggles against enemies who try to challenge unity, sovereignty and territorial integrity. The victory of the 45th Karamara celebrations at Ethio-Cuba Friendship Park year after year depicts the bitter sacrifice Ethiopians paid for its loyalty and dignity and marks the victory Ethiopian Defense Force over the invading army of the Erbari of Somalia in 1975. The event was colorful at the Ethio-Cuba Friendship Park in the presence of members of the diplomatic community, high government officials, veterans and residents of Addis Ababa among others. Addressing the participants in his opening remarks, Ambassador of Cuba to Ethiopia, Jorge Leifberg Nicolas, said the sacrifice paid by Cuban soldiers at the battle became a strong foundation for the relations of brotherhood and solidarity between the Cuban and Ethiopian peoples.
45 years ago today, Karamara put an end to the expansionist dream of the Somali military regime and allowed Ethiopian territorial integrity and sovereignty over the Ogaden Desert to be maintained. But beyond that, Karamara sealed with the blood spill of the battlefield the deep and lasting friendship that exists today between the people of Cuba and Ethiopia.
A testimony that Ethiopians from time to time paid the ultimate sacrifices in defense of our liberty, integrity, and sovereignty.
The historical ties between the two countries got strength from the historic military cooperation in 1975 and has continued in multifaceted areas. Ethiopia is the country that has defended sovereignty from many attempts of invasion by outsiders through sacrifice of brave sons and daughters, and Ethiopia always remembers the support it received from sister countries at times of need.
Another domain, permanent representative of Ethiopia to UN office in Geneva and other international organization in Switzerland, Ambassador Dagab Kabebo paid a courteous visit on Filippo Grandi, High Commissioner for the UN Refugee Agency. He discussed ways of supporting Ethiopia, which hosts close to 1 million refugees, including the more than 100,000 new refugees from Somalia, which are currently in the country due to the ongoing conflict in Lasando district. The UNHCR High Commissioner appreciated the long-standing generosity of the people and government of Ethiopia for welcoming refugees. UNHCR is working on a new appeal for the new arrivals, he noted.
በመጣበት ጊዜ ያውን የሚታየው ቤታውን ተሰራው ደሞ ከተለሳዳሪው ተገልጿል በቂ አይደለም ዱንካን የለም ይሄ መንጎስር ነው የሚሰፍረው ሁሉ ይሄ ዝናብ እየዘነበ እዛ ውስጥ ነው ባለው አሁን አንዳንዶቹ ማሻአላ እየመጡ ማለት ነው ራሳቸው ለሶስት ቀን ብቻ አድሮበት የሚወጡ እየሰሩ እየተስፋፋ ነው ለወደፊቱ ኢንሻአላ እኛ ተስፋ አንቆርጥም
በብዛት ያገር ውስጥ ቱሪስቶች ወይ የሃይማኖቱ ተከታዮች በአብዛኛው ጊዜ በመስከረም ወር ውስጥ በሚከበረው ያረፋ በዓል ላይ ብዛት ያላቸው የሃይማኖቱ ተከታዮች ወደዛ ቦታ መጣው ያንን በዓል ያከብራሉ
In our business segment, a Pakistani delegation consists of close to 75 investors has arrived in Addis Ababa on Sunday. The group is expected to explore the business and investment opportunities in Ethiopia. Ethiopian ambassador to Pakistan, Jamal Bakr, told ETV while warmly welcoming these delegates arrive on Sunday at Bole International Airport. And the delegation is comprised of delegate members involved in a number of sectors have just arrived in Addis Ababa. Let's take a look.
Today's event is warm receptions done for Pakistani delegations who are numbered around 71. These business communities, we have tried to, mobilize them since we have moved. As you know, Ethiopia Embassy has opened recently. It is only 6 months we are in operational. We have made contacts with different Chamber of Commerce, starting from where we headquarter. All the way we have toured with all the Chamber of Commerce. We have met with all selected, priority areas for our government: textile, pharmaceutical, chemicals, and sugar, rice, all of them. So this is the core industry of Pakistan. These people who came today, they cover most of the Pakistani economy. These are the top companies in Pakistan who want to see, explore, invest, and connect with Ethiopia.
The ambassador also went on saying that during their stay in Addis Ababa until Friday, the delegates will be briefed on the business legal frameworks of the country and will pay a visit to many different historical sites and industrial places in the country.
Thank you. Starting from tomorrow, we have a business forum that will touch all the legal issues. Basically, what is the investment opportunity in Ethiopia and what legal framework that we have, the certain incentives that we have as well, and the supportive government that we trying to pursue. So we try to present the overall investment opportunity of Ethiopia, plus again interacting with the business community from Ethiopia also, so that they can join joint venture and also give a little bit explanation, connection with them. So overall, that one tomorrow we'll do. After that, we are also going to visit industrial parks, especially Kilinto, pharmaceutical areas, Lammi. So they will see physically one-shop service, plus again the infrastructure available for them. So they can easily bring their machineries, invest, connect with it. So for us, this is a breakthrough. For Ethiopia's foreign policy, this indicates the success of Ethiopia's foreign policy in recruiting, in attracting foreign direct investment. So it is really a good opportunity for our country, and we're very grateful for those who visited us, who believed our government, who believed us, and today they came to see the realities on the ground.
Foreign Affairs State Minister Ambassador Misgano Ragar, along with the Minister of Planning and Development Fitsum Assefa, held a business discussion with the co-founder of a Hungarian-based international firm, Equilibrium Capital, Peter Nagy, in Doha, Qatar. The meeting, organized by the Ethiopian Embassy in Doha, focused on the potential of the firm's invest in Ethiopia's energy sector through a joint venture. Equilibrium Capital is a firm engaged in the provision of sustainable financing, including in energy infrastructure. According to ENA, the Ethiopian higher official briefed the co-founder of the firm about the investment opportunities in Ethiopia, particularly to the potential in the generation of renewable energy and transmission and provision of electricity services. They also highlighted the priority given by the Ethiopian government to equity capital following the opening up of the banking and financial sector for foreign investors, which is under implementation as part of the Ethiopian homegrown economic reform. Ethiopian runners stole the highlights of the 2023 Tokyo Marathon here on Sunday, winning 5 out of 6 podium places. Desso Galemsa, who broke the Paris Marathon record last year, outsprinted compatriot Mohamed Issa by 1 second to win the men's race, 2 hours 5 minutes and 23 seconds. Their teammates Aga Getachew finished the third in 2 hours 5 minutes and 25 seconds. Canada's Camille Levins, who was fifth in 2 hours and 5 minutes and 22 seconds, beating the 21-year-old North American record by 2 seconds. The previous mark was set by Khalid Kanuchi of the United States in the 22 London Marathon. Ethiopian also took the second and third places in the women's race, which was won by Kenya's Rosemary Wanjuri in 2 hours 60 minutes and 28 seconds. Tsahai Gamachu finished second in 2 hours 60 minutes and 56 seconds, and Ashete Bekre were third in 2 hours and 19 minutes and 11. Warkana Idisa, also of Ethiopian, finished fourth in 2 hours 20 minutes and 13 seconds, according to Athletics Federation. And now recap of the top stories once again. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed paid a visit to Doha, Qatar. And Ethiopia marks the 45th anniversary